Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartofilis.
Jonathan, what's going on?
Hey, man, I'm so glad to be here, man. Everything is just beautiful. It's beautiful.
I feel like I'm talking to myself just because that's like kind of the positive outlook I try to bring all the time. So I'm super happy that you're excited. I'm fired up. I'm kind of just bringing a bunch of energy into the show, and I'm really having a conversation that's really gonna open a lot of people's minds and hearts and really all around. It's gonna be a great time talking. So thank you so much for coming on. And I guess jumping right into it, I'm curious. We're going to talk about so many positive values, right? So many things that are really, I think, gonna help a lot of people through whatever they're going through, or really just kind of change their perspective maybe a little bit, or maybe just open their eyes a little bit more. Can you talk to us a little bit about maybe just your upbringing, maybe where this kind of desire for just improvement or whatever might be kind of started for you? Where did this maybe begin? So maybe our listeners have some context and say, okay, that's why he thinks this way. Oh, that's why he's so passionate. Where did all this stuff come from?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm just honored to be here, and it really started in my home. You know, in fact, the first book I wrote, I was trying to write a book that was going to be entitled a response to the African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child." And the book I was started out writing was called "It Begins in the Hut." And, and that's where I think everything starts, man, at home. And so for me, my passion and my outlook about life, about community, about family, all of it started at home, man. Born in Alabama, raised in Detroit, got that dual upbringing, spent my summers in Birmingham, Alabama, spent all my schooling in Detroit, man. And so I got a well-rounded, I'm a Southern Northerner. So I have this hodgepodge of cultures that have come together, and it's just the way I was raised, man. My grandfather had a saying. He said, when you wake up, get up. And when you get up doing something, So I've always been about action, man, about trying to solve a problem and make an impact while I can.
Oh, definitely so important to live those actions out and think about that. And when we spoke right in our pre-call, you kind of spoke about this whole idea of purpose, and it's something I try to think about all the time, right? And maybe in terms of in basketball terms with the team, you kind of always hear people talk about roles, right? Know your role, play your role, and I've never really liked that term because I feel like it makes you sound like what you're doing just makes you feel unhappy. Like what I'm doing just is something I don't want to be doing, right? Something's a chore. Can you talk a little bit about purpose? And I know it's something that you've written about so many times in your books, and it's obviously something that you live your life living. What are some of the ideas of purpose that I think that you've thought of before?
Yeah, so the whole idea about purpose is, for me, is not about, you use the term about playing your role. And so one of the ideas about purpose is, you remember from big time when Charles Barkley got into a lot of trouble when he made the statement, "I'm not a role model." And so from that whole idea, I think your purpose is when you are a real model. In other words, it comes from an authentic place, because you can only authentically be yourself. Once you get comfortable with who you are and how you were designed and how you were wired, and begin to walk in that realm, then you can begin to fulfill your purpose. In other words, you can't take a nice Corvette and use it to knock down houses. It can do it. You get that baby cranked up about 60, 70 miles an hour and drive into a house. The house may come down, but it's not going to work out too good for the Corvette, So your purpose is all about you taking the reason you were made the way you were made, what family you were born to, when you were born. You're tall like us, 6'4" guys. It's for a reason. And so when you put all of that together and let that inform who you are, I always ask my students, who are you becoming? So I never ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow? What are you becoming for a unique reason? And when you find that purpose, man, what you were really designed to do, I think then you hit your sweet spot, like when you're hitting a golf ball, man, when you hit it just right, you don't even feel it. You hit the baseball, when you come through that swing just the right spot, man, you don't even feel it. And so I think that's when you found your purpose, man, when you can just flow with what you were designed to do and to be.
Oh, 100%. And it's incredible kind of thinking about just maybe how fulfilling that feeling might be of finding your purpose. And really what I hope is draws the listeners to kind of think, okay, but what can I find my purpose? Have I found it, but am I really chasing it the way I should be, right? Am I really going after that? And it's so important kind of thinking it in that holistic way. I'm curious, maybe that was one of the first books that you wrote was about purpose. What made you maybe want to start writing that? What made you put those thoughts you had on paper and actually write a book on an idea that you're so passionate about?
Yeah, so it came from, I've been blessed to have a lot of mentors in my life, man. One of the mentors that I actually never got a chance to meet him was Dr. Miles Monroe, extensively about purpose. It was the first book I read. His book was called The Pursuit of Purpose. And so when I was exposed to his book, and then he came to my church and spoke, and it just ignited something in me, the whole idea of knowing who you are actually, because in life we play a lot of roles, and so it just got me so excited. And then in my work, in working with young people and working with children, trying to guide them to grow up and have productive and fruitful lives, I just found how purpose just went together with that, in terms of me helping them to look inside. And you don't have to accept what other people say you are, but what does God say that you are, and who are you really on the inside, and when you begin to answer that question, it just inspired me to begin to write and begin to share the things that I was learning about purpose, about understanding who you are and who you're supposed to be. And so it just really inspired me. The more I learned about myself, the more I wanted to just share with others. So I have just really come to understand I'm really a conduit. Anything that I'm learning, I try to find a way to pass it on through my personality, through my way of thinking, through my opportunities, and in my sphere of influence. So it's just a wonderful thing.
Oh, I love that. I can relate to that so much. Obviously, with this show, this is being kind of maybe what my passion is, and it's turning into maybe what my purpose is maybe right now. And I'm curious, maybe this idea of purpose, is this something that is this like a one thing that's like for your entire life, or is it something that consistently changes? Like how do you kind of view is purpose maybe something that's okay? This is like this show, having you on this show and getting your words out. Is that kind of what my purpose is, or is there a bigger thing that's more overarching? What do you think kind of goes?
I think our purpose is always something bigger than you can even imagine or hold on to, so it kind of starts with the whole idea of having a vision, and the vision must be something that's almost unaccomplishable. You can't really quite get there, but you're designed to move in that direction. And so as you're going to be pulled in those directions, what I've learned is that all of the experiences and your gifts and your talents, the older you get, the more they begin to dovetail and make sense. I'll give you an example. I like laughter, and it's something that, it's just been a part of my life, my whole life. I have a kind of a sense of humor. And so when I grew up, we used to always do what the young people now, they call it baking, cooking, roasting, frying people, playing the dozens, joking. And I was just naturally very good at it on the team, on the bus. And, the guys are sitting back there and they're cracking on people. I was always very good at it. And so I learned, long story short, I learned that way of using my humor was actually bringing people down. One of my good friends in high school, he was an all-city lineman, man, and his name was Craig, man. He was going to beat me up because I got on this roll with this joke, and I just kept going. And he was like, "Hey, man, hey, remember I gave you a ride home from school? Don't talk about me." And the more he would say, the more ideas kept coming to me, and I was just on a roll. And so by the end of the day, man, the word went all around the school that because I was on the track team, he was on the football team, we shared the locker room. I said, when you get there, man, Craig is going to beat you up, man. Craig was like 300 pounds in high school, man. I was like 150 pounds. I was like, this is not good. And so, I courageously went there at the end of the day. And I was just faced my punishment, man. And it was so cool because when I got there, he faced me and he walked up to me and he said, "You know what, man? I was going to break you half in two, but I decided to forgive you, man." And that was like one of those moments in life that, I just had to stick a pin in it. But what I learned is that I have this gift of making people laugh, but I learned that the purpose of that talent is to build people up and not tear them down. And so now I use my humor to lift people up as opposed to tearing them down. And so that's how your purpose works, man. You may have gifts and talents and skills, but you'll start finding your purpose when you find out how they make the world a better place. I don't believe anybody's purpose is to tear things up.
I mean, and thank you so much for sharing that story, because it really brings it all back into thinking of how am I using my gifts and my talents? Am I using it to fulfill my purpose? Am I using it in a destructive way? And it's been like you could see that as a positive, like, oh, I'm making everybody laugh, but you're making everyone laugh at the expense of someone else, which is something to think about. Is that something maybe our listeners can think about and say, am I doing this with something totally different? Definitely super applicable, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And thinking about how we all have a responsibility to kind of see where our passion is and what our purpose is, and going after it. It brought up this idea of accountability, right? And we spoke about this off air a little bit about how important accountability is, and how maybe a lot of people maybe try to avoid accountability. They try to, it's not my fault, and it's that guy's, and it's the sun's fault that I struck out, or it's the rim's fault that I missed a shot. And that's maybe the sports analogy, but it's so prevalent in all walks of life. Can you talk a little bit about accountability, because I know it's something that you're incredibly passionate about, because it's something that obviously is so prevalent in society.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountability, it really, what it does, it speaks to our humanity. You know what I'm saying? So I can't enjoy the fruits of whatever I'm accomplishing if it's tearing down what you're trying to accomplish. And so a friend of mine used to always say, your private thoughts are public, and my interpretation of that is because it drives behavior. What you think drives what you actually do. And so as I begin to think about others, and then I have to have a circle of people that I allow to hold me accountable. And so I have a group of friends that we hold each other accountable. I've given them permission to speak into my life, and I can speak into their life. So if they see me off track, they can call me up and say, hey, John, I saw what you did, man. Hey, don't ever do that again. Like, man, that's not right. You need to consider these things. And so we begin to hold each other accountable, because accountability is really rooted in honesty. If I don't want to be honest or transparent, then I don't want to be held accountable. What most people, they say, I judge people by what they do. And that's fair. But most of us want to be judged by what we intended to do. And that's one of the things I write about in one of my books called Take Charge of Your Life. I talk about intention as one of the concepts that we have to consider if you really want to take charge of your life. You have to think about, what is my intent? It's like in sports, you intend to get up and hit a home run. And so if you don't, now let's look at your process that you went through, because we can do that. But if in your mind, you don't have the intent to hit a home run, it's not going to happen. I don't know if anybody who accidentally hits a home run. It's like, oops. Oh, you're up there trying to kill that thing. And so intent is a very big part of accountability. What am I intending to do? And you can hold me accountable, because now when you hold me accountable, it helps me to recalibrate and get back on track toward accomplishing that intention that I had at the beginning. So I think it's important, man, to always have accountability in your life.
So important. And I know there's a lot of other lessons in that book, right? In taking charge of your life, there's 10 concepts that are in that book. And I'm sure that that's one of the most important ones. Are there any other ones in there maybe that really stand out to readers outside of course, we talk about accountability, purpose? Is there anything in that book maybe that you're like, oh, I was really proud of that one concept, because it's so impactful and so many people have used it to find success?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my personal favorite one is in the first chapter. I talk about, it's called Reverie. And it's a concept of reverie. And reverie just means to muse on pleasant things. And so I use that concept in terms of taking charge of your life. When you engage in reverie, you're giving yourself permission to think about the positive outcome that you intend to have. You give yourself permission to think about the things that are going well in your life. And so most of us, when we decide we want to get serious, what do? Well, I got to do some thinking. Okay. And what do we think about? We think about everything that's going wrong. We think about all of our problems, all of our shortcomings and our flaws, the things that we want to fix in our lives. So we have to give yourself permission to appreciate what's gone well. The kid who gets 20 out of 10 on a spelling test, yeah, he's getting an F, but actually doesn't mean he can't spell. He just can't spell well enough to get higher, to get an A, but he can spell. And so when you do that, now you can begin to build on that, and begin to work once you understand that I want to think about my life. And so I see myself as a speller because I can spell 20% worth. Now let me build toward that, because maybe I can get 40. I can't see myself getting 80%, but man, I know how to get 20. So if I can get 20 more, that's 40. I just made 100% improvement. And so it changed. Reverie helps you to change your perspective about what's going on. And I think it's just a huge concept to help us to, when you really want to take charge of your life, change how you see things.
Of course, that's incredibly impactful, and I can imagine that thinking about it that way just makes life just feel so much just a little bit brighter in terms of thinking about through things that way. I'm curious, right? Sometimes a lot of people maybe might point to things that are unforeseen, right? And the COVID-19 pandemic is a fantastic example of that, because okay, wow, who could have predicted a global pandemic lasting over a year, and there's so many implications that has so many people, and it's incredibly unfortunate. But it's right, you've written a lot of books detailing maybe how to have strength in hard times, right? Maybe how to get through a pandemic and come out of it a little bit better. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what that exactly looks like in terms of maybe experiencing something incredibly arduous and incredibly difficult and taxing, but coming out of it a better person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up that book, Anchored: Strength in Hard Times. It's a book that I had so much fun putting it together. It is actually the result of I'm an NBA chaplain with the Detroit Pistons. And so I meet with the players 1 hour before tip-off for all the home games. And, we have prayer, and, I give them a little short lesson. And one of the things I did a series called 12 Anchors of Faith, the players. And it actually became a book called Anchored: Strength in Hard Times. And so in that book, I talk about the different aspects of your faith that you need to remember when things get difficult, because you see people all the time, they got the bracelets, what would Jesus do, and all kinds of positive sayings on t-shirts and all of these things. I'm a person of faith. And, some people, they use all the church terms, hey, praise the Lord, and all of these things. But then when trouble comes, they forget all about it. We get depressed and you go through all these things. I'm like, hey, what about that faith you said you had? Remember when things were going well? And so in the whole idea is that there are different aspects of your faith. Like, one of the aspects is that you have to remember that God has the ability to make you a winner. Let me give you an example. God doesn't depend on you to be awesome and be a winner. He will make up for your shortcomings. It just has a way of doing it. I'll give you an example. This is an example I like to use. I ran track in high school. My high school was awesome. Shout out to Detroit Cass Tech. Our motto is number one, second to none. So we do a lot of self-cheerleading. But when I ran track, I ran with some incredible guys. Our team, we won 2 state championships in a row, undefeated. I'm running with guys that were All-Americans, All-State. They all went D1. I was probably one of the worst guys on the team. I wasn't very good. But from working with these guys who were so good, I got a chance to learn how to work. And being a part of that, there's a picture that they had in the showcase for many, many years, because that was 1978. It was a state championship picture with the track team and, state champs and all that. And I'm in this picture, right? I never won a race. The entire time I was on the track team, I never won a race. I never placed first, second, or third. But all the guys in my event were all state and all Americans. So I never was able to beat anybody. But I'm in the picture. In other words, their work, their awesomeness benefited me to be a part of the team. And so that's kind of what you have to remember, is that in your the Bible teaches us that God's strength is perfected in our weakness. So in other words, the more weak you are, the more opportunity for God to show how strong he is. And so those are the kind of things that, I wanted to help people to remember in hard and difficult times. Now, the powerful thing is I wrote that book the year before the pandemic. It came out in 2019. I didn't know this was going to happen. And so it was really in place for a lot of people to help them through what was coming. And the follow-up to it, during the pandemic, I released Anchored, a creative arts devotional guide that goes with the book. And so if you can just imagine, we're going through these concepts of remembering how your faith works and, all those things. But people are literally in that book, they're drawing out their reality. They're writing poetry, solving puzzles, just really finding a creative way to express your thoughts, because sometimes we do everything the hard way, but there's some natural gifts that you have inside of you that you have to express and let those things help you in difficult times. And so it's kind of therapeutic in a way.
And I definitely could so see how kind of looking at things from that perspective definitely is incredibly therapeutic. It makes you just feel a lot better looking out onto everything. I'm curious, right? So we're talking about these experiences, and what I think is incredibly interesting then too is what is your work in helping parents, and obviously a lot of it's tied into what you just said about the pandemic and getting through hard times. I'm curious, maybe what kind of drew you to helping both whether it's young people, college age students, right? Whether it's the younger generation, and then obviously helping parents and maybe even mentors in assisting them through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been working with parents since 1993. I came into the schools to help find a solution to the 9th grade dropout rate that was happening in Detroit. I was working for an automotive company. They sent me in there as a gift to the school. And so I came in and, I'm working with the young people. And it became apparent to me right away, I can't help them if I don't help their parents. And so I started doing workshops with parents and students, bringing them together. So over the years, I just began to understand the importance of helping parents help the school to educate the children. And so it became a really important part of my work. And so in my writing this year, I wrote a book called Pandemic Parenting. It's Impact Strategies for Success. So during this pandemic, what happened in schools all over the country is that they were all changing. Every week, they're doing something different. Why? Because every week they're experiencing something different. We've gone through no school. All schools were shut down. Then they went virtual. And then some schools, they went into a hybrid mode. It's like, well, some kids are virtual, some are not, and going back and forth. And so my book helps parents to have those fundamental things that you need to have that your child can be successful, whether they're doing virtual or, as schools are going through all their transitions. It's the fundamental things. It's just like in basketball, man. If you got the fundamentals, it doesn't matter what play the coach wants to run. If you're fundamentally sound, you'll be able to execute that play. And so it's the same thing academically. And so I have a framework that I developed. It's called Impact. It stands for investment, management, presence, advocacy, coaching, and thoughtfulness. And those are the framework that every parent, if you work in those realms, then your child will be stable enough to make it through these things, and you'll have a better relationship with the school. There are three entities. You have the student, the parent, and the school, and all three want the same result. And this is what I've discovered. Each entity thinks the other two entities are crazy. So kids are looking at parents and educators like, man, none of them know what's going on. Parents think there's something wrong with their kid and their teacher. And so it just works that way. But in my work, in my book, I try to help them come together and begin to appreciate each other's contributions to the success of the students. So, yeah, I'm very committed to that.
That's so important, and of course, helping the youth. And like you said, obviously, when we spoke a little bit off air, just obviously incredibly supporting the show and obviously the work I'm doing as a young adult. So really thankful for you in that respect, in trying to help young people, right, reach their dreams. And you dropped a quote, right, and no one can find this until the episode's posted, because it'll be posted, it'll be live maybe on the internet for the first time with this episode. In terms of when you're now famous to me, quote is, "It's not what you experience, it's what you've experienced," right? Which you said it. I wrote it down right away. I sent it to you to make sure you had it. I wanted to make sure. I wanted to kind of ask you: Have you maybe since you said that when we last spoke, have you thought about it a little bit? Have you prayed on it? Maybe elaborated on it as to how that kind of plays into the bigger picture of your teachings?
Well, you know what? I need to really massage that, because that was one of those, we used to say back in the 70s, that was a Kodak moment. You know, it was one of those moments, you got to write this down and take it down. But it really builds off of something that I've come to understand. You don't choose what you like. What you like chooses you. And so the things that happen in life, and this is what I coached basketball for 18 years, middle school, the boys and the girls, man, for 18 years. And one of the things that I was very big on talking to my young student athletes about is when you make a mistake, if you learn from it, now it can become an experience that you just refer to. But if you don't learn from it, it's forever a mistake. And so the whole idea of experience, not what you experience, but what you've experienced, means it's not what happens to you in life, but it's how you use it for your own growth and development. How do you learn from that? And then now you can take something that was potentially negative for you, and then you say, you know, you'll have to picture yourself going forward in life saying, you know, I had an experience where this happened and that happened. And that's why I can talk about negative things that happened in my life, because I've allowed them to become experiences that have taught me lessons in life. And so I don't have those carryovers of just every mistake I've ever made hanging over my head. It's like, no, those are experiences. How? Because I learned the lesson. And so I became experienced at that. Hopefully never to be repeated again. But sometimes you have to repeat a class every now and then. Not you, John. Not you, but I'm talking about me.
I hope like I said, hopefully for all of us that we could all maybe make that mistake maybe once and then label as an experience, put it on the filing cabinet, close that filing cabinet, lock it up, and it's lit. Well, or leave it unlocked and we can open it up and look at the experience and maybe look at it again. But definitely put it in the filing cabinet instead of out on your desk. You don't want that on your desk. Definitely not.
Absolutely. Right.
So we're talking about all these experiences, and one of the ones that maybe we spoke about that I thought was so cool, right? Is you, and you had mentioned it first, and I waited for you to finish before jumping in saying, oh, I have a similar experience, was visiting a prison and playing basketball with inmates, and maybe sharing that experience. And it goes so much deeper than just a game of basketball. Where I mean, for my experience, right, we brought them food, soap, clothes, right, all these things, and I was so focused on the game going into it. And like I told you, right, after the game, it was all I was thinking about was everything outside of basketball. It had nothing to do with the game anymore. It had to do with these people, they're them as actual human beings. The act we did of bringing things to them and kind of thinking about the bigger picture as to why we're there playing instead of just the on the court stuff. Can you guys talk a little about your experience in doing that? Obviously, doing it way more times than I have, but in obviously experiencing what maybe it's like kind of giving back to in a way that many people don't have a chance to do.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's one of the most rewarding experiences that I ever had being in and around athletics, man. It was just awesome. We used to go and play. I was on a team that was, I like to say, similar to an AAU. I mean, not AAU, not AAU, AIA, Athletes in Action. It was a Christian basketball team. And so most of the guys on the team were Division I players and things like that. I wasn't, but you know, I'm that guy that all the good players let me play with them, but I never really was that guy. So somehow I get on this team and we're there. We would play the prison all-star team. They had an intramural league at the prison, and we would go there once a month or every 3 weeks and play against their all-star team. They had fans that would come out, their bleachers, and so all the inmates would come to this game, and we'd be out there, man. It was just, I'll tell you something funny, John. The first time I played, I hadn't had a chance to practice with the team because we didn't practice. You just show up and play. And so I get there, and the guy who invited me, he wasn't there. He couldn't come. So here I am. I don't know the coach. I don't know these players. And so I get out there, and the coach says, he said, well, just stand to the side and I'm going to put you in a minute. Just kind of see what we're doing and I'm going to work you in. Well, my friend had recruited me as a shooter. You know, that's what he told me. Hey, I got this shooter for you, man. He can really shoot the ball. Of course, I want to live up to the hype, of course. And so he finally put me in, and I'm not ashamed to say, man, I was so nervous, you know, from watching movies and things about prisons. You probably had the same experience. I'm telling you, John, the first shot I took, It was a deep three, man. It was like a Steph Curry deep three. You couldn't even tell what I was shooting at, man. I mean, it didn't hit the backboard. It didn't hit the rim. I don't know where it went. It was just, I was so nervous. And so the guy told me to calm down in the second half. And so he said, just focus on defense. And so long story short, I had a great second half, and then a great, number of years that we played. But what happened is I learned that it was just so critical to understand that these guys, because we would do 1 year and come back the next year, and the same guys are there. And I thought about how, man, these guys, I thought all the things I had done since I had last seen them, because it was a great reunion. They're glad to see you when you come in, because nobody comes to see about these guys. I started thinking, man, these guys didn't just decide to run up to the corner store, go to McDonald's and get a number 5, or, they hadn't done any of those things. In fact, even when they wanted to watch a movie, they had a program director who selected which movies they could watch. I mean, so that was just really amazing to me. But what I learned from that experience is that there were some great people. And John, let me tell you this. I didn't tell you this. After that, many years later, I've had guys who come to me out in society. They've gotten out and they remember, say, hey, man.
Wow.
I remember you, man. You came to such prison, man. And I was such a blessing, man. It's so good to see you. And in fact, one guy has become a dear friend, and we actually sing together.
No way. That's awesome.
And turns out I actually knew his brother. I used to play ball with his brother. Didn't know who he was. Don't even remember seeing him there. And so, so it's just a great experience, because one of the things that is important to me is understanding, even though guys get incarcerated for whatever reasons, they're coming back. And so I'm all about making things better so that when they do come home, it can be a better experience. They can have a better life, connect to their purpose, and be productive citizens.
I love that. And I mean, it's funny because we spoke so much about this, and I learned so much hearing from you about this off air. And then all the stories you shared just now were that, but also some brand new ideas that are just making me even think more about that. Because obviously, like I told you, when I got home that night, my biggest thing was I'm home. To me, it's normal, but this is I have it. It's a blessing. But when I was there, I think I mentioned how we had to wait a long time for the bus to come, and it was a whole process to get off Rikers Island, and it was a whole big procedure, and everyone was annoyed. Everyone was like, oh my God, it's we're going to get home super late. We all have homework to do. And the reality was we're all blessed. And in thinking of it that way, but obviously, thinking about the importance of what we did, it really did bring everything kind of full circle, and really did open my mind a lot. And I'm really thankful for the opportunity I've done it. My mom, like you had said, getting there, maybe being a little nervous. My mother was calling the school frantically, trying to find out where we were going, who we were going to. She was very, very uptight about the whole going to a prison thing to play basketball. Didn't fly well, but definitely thankful for the opportunity I ended up going. Definitely incredible to think about all those experiences and awesome thinking about maybe all the experiences that you've had and how they've led up to this. I'm curious, right? So in terms of what you're doing now, just the work of an NBA chaplain, you had mentioned at the beginning, right? How you lead the team in prayer an hour before the games. You said before all the games, all the teams have one. It's something that happens all the time, and the common fan has no idea that people like you exist and that are bringing so much positivity into both the world, but also specifically the league and its players. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what your role is there, or your purpose, I should say?
Yeah, it's really more about purpose, and so the league, more than 30 years ago, they started, chaplaincy. It's something that's driven by the players. It's something players have negotiated, that they have provided for them a place where they can gather. And those who want to, it's completely voluntary for those who want to have a place to come and to gather in prayer. What's so beautiful about it is both teams come together. And which is different than most other sports. Most teams have their own chaplain, they just do their own thing. But in the NBA, both teams come together with 60 minutes on the clock. And so it's only about a 15 minute session. And what I'm really excited about is the other chaplains around the league, how we get together, support one another. And that's what's so beautiful, the brotherhood of the chaplains, all over the country. And the beautiful thing, I'll share this with you. Last year, when we had All-Star game in Chicago, And the chaplains, we went and, had a beautiful time because we have a prayer breakfast that's sponsored by retired players. They sponsor a prayer breakfast, and so they invite the chaplains to come, and so it's just a beautiful thing. But one of the things that we did in Chicago, man, the chaplains got together and we went to Cook County Jail and had a chapel service with the inmates, and it was so rewarding, man. They were so excited to have us guys there. And so it's a volunteer position, but it has a lot of perks and benefits. But one of the things about it, the reason why people don't know a lot about it, is because it's designed that way. We're there for the players, to be a place where they can come and just relax and settle themselves, center themselves around their faith. And so we're kind of a low key project, within the league, and very well supported, by the league. And so it's just a beautiful opportunity, man, to encourage young men who, if you think about it, I don't know about you. Well, you are at that age. You're 20, 21. These guys are your age, man. So, John, if you can imagine, if you had enough money to do any crazy idea that came to your mind, you might need some time to center yourself and just, I know for me, when I was that age, man, I needed a lot of guidance. So we just try to be that for them, man. Just be there, be available for them, whoever needs it, whenever they want to. And we look after entire NBA family, man. Anybody that they need prayer or whatever it is, man, we're just there to serve and stay out of the way, but just be there. And so that it's very rewarding in that way. And so I really love it and enjoy it.
It's an incredible thing about the work you do, and it's really interesting, but there's so much more, right, than your work with the Pistons. Obviously, you do so much for the community, going to schools and spreading the same message maybe you're putting in your books, giving to the players, and then also giving it to like we said before, right, the young people, the children, the school people in the school systems, and right, inmates, right, so many people that desperately need maybe this message, this guidance, maybe just some support, right, and during especially during these difficult times. Can you kind of explain maybe what you're doing in the school systems and how you can see that's maybe helping people out?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's just I found my joy when I found myself being an educator. I'm a classically trained artist, graphic designer, and that's what I thought I was going to do for my life. And, life has its twists and turns, man. And I found myself in the school mentoring kids and not knowing it was going to lead to me actually becoming an educator. And so what I do now, I consult with schools on school culture and climate. And so for me, that's really the same thing as being a minister, because what I do, I come into schools and help them set the right atmosphere so that learning can take place. And, so I design programs for schools, do training for teachers and staff. I do parent trainings. So it's just a wonderful thing that I do through my company called Kingdom Concepts. And so that's what I sponsor all my books through, and the training. And so it's just really awesome. I get an opportunity to work with some fine, outstanding young people. And many of my former students have gone on to do some incredible things, like playing in the NFL and the NBA and owning businesses that are just doing great things. And so when I come into a school, even like a young person I talked to today, she was kind of discouraged, man. So I went on YouTube and showed her some videos of some of my former student athletes and let her know that, hey, this could be you. And man, she was so fired up, man. She did all of her work today and she was just really pushing the envelope. And so that in that way, I'm really doing one thing, but I do it in so many different places, man. So whether it's in the NBA or it's in schools or in the church or in the community, I'm always doing one thing, and that's working hard to develop leaders and families and have a good time doing it. And so people think I'm doing a lot of different things, but I'm really doing one thing in many locations.
It's incredible, right? And like you said, right, you're kind of keeping that, you're doing that same thing of spreading that message, and but you're just doing it at scale, right? At so many different places with so many different people and touching so many lives. So I really love that. And what you're doing there is great. Thinking about maybe how you're continuing to do it going forward. I'm sure, right? You've written all these books, right? You've spread so many messages that way. Like we've discussed all the avenues you've gone through. What's kind of next? Are you writing another book? Is there something else I can kind of look forward to? Is there something that listeners can look forward to reading or hearing more from after they finish this podcast? What's kind of next?
Yeah, what's next, man? I'm almost finished with another book, but it keeps growing, it keeps shifting and turning. But I'm writing a book about fatherhood, man. Of course, I'm the father of 4 children. My wife and I have four wonderful children and 2 grandchildren, and so I've been a father figure throughout the community and in schools and so many places. So I'm writing a book, and it's called Father Figure: Lessons in Leadership. And I'm really excited about it. And so in that book, I kind of tell some of the stories of my role, different aspects of being a father, a sports father, because all of my kids are student athletes. And, so I've been in different roles as a father, being a father as a coach, being a father as an educator, father in the community, and not even knowing so many young men that grew up with my son viewed me as their father figure. And I didn't even know it. I can remember one kid coming and showing me his paper that he wrote for school. And he wrote a paper about me as a father figure. I had no idea. I would just grab all the guys up. We're all going to the game. So whatever I did for my son, I would include them. And, and so I'm just sharing that to encourage men to know that we all have that fatherliness in us. And so just want to encourage men that we can be father figures, no matter if we have natural children or not. Whatever role we're playing, we're built to be father figures. And so that's where I learned a lot of my lessons in leadership.
I love that lesson. That's fantastic. And thinking about like what you just said about being a father figure without maybe having a biological son, right? That's something maybe I can kind of think about it. And how can I maybe exhibit some of those characteristics through coaching, right? Obviously I'm super young, but how can I try to support other young people, or maybe like it could even go maybe like a reverse thing, where there's such a thing as reverse mentorship, where someone younger can benefit, help someone older just because, right, of that relationship. How would you say that works? And how have you maybe seen that in all these, in so many relationships that you've seen, like where someone's not your biological son or biological father, but there's a relationship there that's somewhat similar?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked that. Let me tell you what happened. When I first started, I was young. I was 32 when I first started. So I was in the school and I'm trying to get to know the kids. So whenever you come into a school, if you come there as a mentor or something like that, especially you're a 6'4" black guy, first thing they ask me to do, can you help us with our basketball team? I'm like, okay, yeah, they're going to pay me to coach basketball? Sure. And so I started doing that. And there was this one kid, I was working with. I mean, he seemed like he didn't listen to anything I said. He had a lot of anger and, he was very difficult. So they gave me a list of 6 boys that I need to address, right? So you can help all the kids, but these are your 6, man. Get these guys. And they were challenging. And so long story short, so the next year, I had some success because I had never done this before. And so, I just tried to do what I thought was right. You kind of probably how you're doing now. You're feeling your way through. You're a young guy too. And so the next year I'll never forget, it was Halloween. And the school allowed all of the students to dress up in their costumes during the school day. It's hard to imagine that now in today's society. But so they were all day long, all the kids were coming by my office. Hey, Coach Wynne, what am I? Guess what? I'm like, you're Dallas Cowboys. Okay. Whatever it was, firemen. So these 2 guys came by and they had they had a black and white suits, had their ties. Okay, Mr. Wynne, what are we? And I was like, the Blues Brothers. That made sense, shirts, ties, suits. No. So then I said, the Temptations, we're in Motown, right? No. So I went through the entire Motown review, man. I mean, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, the 4 Tops. No. And the guy started getting frustrated. And he was like, Mr. Wynne, don't you get it? Don't you get it? And I'm like, I'm trying, man. And he paused. And it was like a sudden aura just came in the room, and he looked at me straight in my eyes and he says, Mr. Wynne, I'm you. Whoa. Whoa.
Wow. That's...
You dressed up as me for Halloween. What? I'm you. And so that's when I knew the power of being a father figure. I was like, wow. I didn't know he was listening to anything that I was saying. But because of me being diligent to telling him the right things and being consistent with him and being honest with him, being able to celebrate when he was doing the right things, but honest enough to let him know, hey man, that wasn't cool. That was not right. But then being willing to walk with him to get it right. See, some people, they're good at pointing out flaws, but they're not going to help you fix it. I call those reporters. They just point, he's doing this and that, but you're not going to help the guy. And so from that's when I began to understand the power of being a father figure. And there are many young men and young ladies that I had the privilege of serving in that way. And so, John, I could tell you're doing the same thing, man. I know you're making a huge impact with the young people that you serve because of the energy that you bring. And so that's what it is, man. It's just understanding that you have a father's authority. One of the things I learned from my dad, he always had this way of carrying himself. He had what I call quiet power. He was never loud or boisterous, but he always was in charge. And so I tried to emulate that. And with my kids, as they were growing up, I always would tell them, look, I have all the authority, you have none, and I'm comfortable with that. Because what that meant is that the responsibility was on me. I had the responsibility to set the atmosphere, I had the responsibility to make sure that they had what they needed. And so that's what really being a father figure is about, taking responsibility, leading by example, encouraging them, and then helping them to get up to that level that you expect.
I love that. And there's definitely so much for me, especially to relate to and take from that. Because in thinking maybe a little deeper in terms of how can I do that? How can I do this to the best of my ability and kind of be that father figure to all these players who obviously are not my actual sons, but how could I try to live that message and bring that across? So there's definitely so many lessons in this entire show. That's a big one that I'm definitely going to take with me. I hope our listeners can all do the same. So, John, thank you so much for coming on the show because like I said, there was so much to take from this, just beginning to end. There's so much positivity and all these values that I think will really be beneficial to whoever's listening. So thank you so much. And I know we'll be keeping in touch and talking to each other soon. And I'm excited for it because every time I just feel a little bit better. The day just gets a little bit brighter. I know the good things are coming up.
Man, thank you so much, John. I just love what you're doing, man. I'm a big fan of yours now. I'm so glad that you reached out and we're just together, man. I really love, honor, and respect you for what you're doing, man. And I'm getting my popcorn because I'm loving the show, baby. And I'm watching what's going on, man. And I'm going to be telling people all about what you do and what you're doing, man. I'm super proud of you, man.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.